everyone, and welcome to the NCN Canada kickoff call. Woo! My name is Erin. I've been in touch with some of you over email, and I'll give a bit more of an introduction in a few minutes. So will Roman, who you've also sort of met. So wave again, Roman, so everyone knows who you are. Yeah, that's Roman. But first, we just wanted to make a couple quick points about the Zoom platform that we're using. I just noticed I'm very close to my camera. My head is like, I'm a floating head here. Just want to move a little bit. So we're using Zoom, and as Roman mentioned, you're all muted for now. There's also a way to change your view in the top right-hand corner. Hover over. I'm going to actually push record right now because we're going to be recording this call for folks who weren't able to attend today. So you may have just seen a notice about that. There's a chat function, which some of you have been using already. So if you are having technical difficulties, maybe just try sending us a note in there, and we'll try our best to keep up to date with that. This is our first time using Zoom with this many people, so it's exciting. It's also, just kind of bear with us. We're trying to navigate things as we go. It's a bit of a learning curve. So far, so good. And yeah, I think that those were the main points we had about Zoom. This is basically, we chose Zoom because we thought it was important for folks to be able to kind of see each other and have at least some sort of interaction as we kind of continue to build and nurture this Canadian network. And so it's a bit better than a traditional conference call in that sense, but it's still not completely ideal because at least for this time, we'll be doing a lot of the talking ourselves. We will have a chance closer to the end of the call to hear from some of you as well. So yeah, okay. So in terms of what we have planned for today's approximately hour-long call, we're first going to continue on with some introductions and then move into a little bit of just historical context. So how did we get to this pilot year that NCN Canada is really kind of emerging as it goes? How did we get here? Really to catch up the folks that perhaps haven't been part of previous conversations, just to bring us all up to speed. Then we'll let you know about the scope of the work that exists for this pilot year. I may say the word pilot a few more times just to emphasize that this really is a pilot year for us. We'll let you know about the plan that we're working from and the deliverables that we're working towards, and then highlight some opportunities for your participation. Spend a little bit more time talking specifically about the community of practice that we're working to develop, and then leave some time for sharing and hearing back from you before we wrap up the call at the end. So our overall goals are to sort of say hi to you, kind of for the first time, put faces to names. Who are these Erin and Roman people that keep emailing us? This is us. We're going to help develop a shared understanding of the expectation and vision for this pilot year, and then to emphasize opportunities for participation. And then also, I think, to celebrate the work that a lot of people have already done to get to this point of NCN Canada even being a thing. It's pretty exciting that it's here and that it's starting to move along. So those are the kind of goals, expectations of today. Let me just see here. Okay. I have a plan that I'm trying to follow here. So I think, okay, so in terms of introductions, it's a bit tricky when there's so many of us to have sort of a one-on-one introduction and all stating our names and where we're from. So we're going to try to do, just by a show of hands, try to get a sense of who's on the call today. And so I'm going to ask just a series of quick questions. You can put up your hand if it applies to you. You can put up your hand more than once, so it's pretty laid back. But we're going to start with location. So I know that we have people from a lot of different places in Canada today. And so I'm going to read off some of those names, or some of those place names, and please raise your hand if you're from there, recognizing that we don't have everyone's camera turned on. But so we have folks from Vancouver, I believe, on this call. There's one in the corner, Jennifer. Oh, I see, that's cool. There's like an actual raise hand function if you don't have your video turned on. Okay, how about Edmonton? Oh, a couple of folks from Edmonton. Calgary, me, us from Calgary. Saskatoon, Any folks from Saskatoon? I think we have Jody on the call from Saskatoon, at least. Is there anyone from Winnipeg? No. Barrie, Ontario. Ah, there, James. Brampton. Maybe one of you out there. Cambridge. Mississauga. Scarborough. And Toronto, or, oh, yeah, we have Jody here from Saskatoon. She sent a text, and then, yeah, so Toronto. Toronto, all right. Yeah, a group of you over there. Awesome. Thought we could also talk through maybe the stage of development that your center is in to see sort of the variety that we have on this call. So, in terms of the pre-development folks, so maybe people that are working in shared spaces or working towards kind of preliminary explorations of shared spaces, maybe recruiting partners, looking at some feasibility plans. Do we have people kind of from that stage on this call? Yeah, one over there. A couple of you. And how about kind of the development stage? So maybe you're launching a capital campaign, maybe you're building a building, renovating a building, sort of working towards opening. We have folks there, one of you there, awesome. And then how about people that they're in shared spaces, they've been operating for under 5 years, they've got tenants in, things are kind of moving along. There might be some of those blank heads that are right now. And then how about the more advanced, mature spaces, so have been around for over 5 years, or maybe looking to expand. Okay, so at least a couple of you. That actually applies to me too. In addition to this role, I actually work in a shared space in Calgary called Community Wise, and we've been open for at least 40 years now. So yeah, we're definitely in a more advanced stage. Okay, well, thank you for that. I also want to acknowledge that there are members from the NCN Canada steering committee on this call. And so NCN Canada does have its own steering committee. And so I see Jennifer Johnston there in the corner who's just waving. She's the president and CEO of Central City Foundation in Vancouver. So hello, Jennifer. Thanks for joining us. I don't know if Jeff Good is on the call.
I have joined on the call at long last.
Oh, well, welcome. So Jeff is also on the steering committee. He's vice president with CRESA, Toronto. Did I say that right?
Yep, it's CRESA.
Perfect. Not on the call, but who sent his regrets is Glenn Newby, CEO of New Path Youth and Family Services in Barrie, Ontario. So he says hello. And then also want to acknowledge Laura Jakubowski, who's on this call, the executive director of NCN, who I'm sure you all know, but just to acknowledge that she's been a huge part of this work, obviously, as we move forward. So, in terms of who are we? Who are Aaron and Roman? Who are these kind of floating heads that you see in the corner of your screen? So my name's Erin McFarlane. I'm based in Calgary, as I mentioned. NCN Canada is actually one of 2 projects that I'm working on through KRD Consulting. I also work in community-wise shared space in Calgary. We're a multi-tenant space, and I'm in a community and an organizational development role there. I've worked in Calgary's nonprofit center, nonprofit sector, I should say, for about 12 years. And I have a master in social work. So social work is my background. Maybe I'll turn it over to Roman just to talk a bit about himself and just briefly about KRD as well.
Hi, folks. So my name is Roman Katz-Nelson, and I'm the other half of the NCN Canada team here for the first year. So I've been working in the kind of nonprofit sectors in the US and Canada over the last 17, 18 years now. And for kind of all of that time, it's been really my focus and my passion and my interest is around collective learning and collective action and collaboration. So when the opportunity came along to work with NCN and to to help to kind of further the goals of NCN Canada. That hit really the sweet spot for us, and so we're thrilled to be doing it. In addition to that, I guess my educational background is I've got an MBA in community economic development. So again, kind of the intersection of business and the economy with community. And so again, I think a lot of sort of angles from CED are really relevant here. So thrilled to be with you guys here for the call today. For the bulk of the talk, my role is really to kind of help out on the tech side and do the Zoom bits behind the scenes while Erin guides us along. But for a couple of the pieces, I'll share some things with you as well. So nice to meet you all.
Awesome. Thanks, Roman. I also should have mentioned that there are certainly people on this call who we're kind of calling like allies, who maybe aren't directly working in shared space, directly providing services, but are certainly supporting both, shared spaces and social purpose real estate in a bunch of different ways. So hello to all of you too. This is not just folks that are working directly in shared spaces on the call today. We just want to spend a bit of time considering how we got to this point, a little bit of history. I'm going to actually turn it over to Laura to maybe give a bit of context about how we got here.
Hi, everybody. I really am so excited that we're here today. This is just awesome. We're super excited. NCN, the Nonprofit Centers Network, we're based here in Denver, Colorado. Many of you we've worked with over many years. And we have members who are involved in social purpose real estate and specifically in shared space most often throughout the US, Canada, Australia. We've got members in Europe. But we've always known that we've had really strong membership representation in Canada and always had a lot of interest in doing more Canadian work. We have 2 staff members here in Denver. Actually, we just added a part-time admin person, but still it's 2 people here in Denver that are trying to accomplish a lot of work. And so when we had the opportunity, having worked with the Spree Table in Vancouver to put on the Building Opportunities Conference in 2015, we had some resources that became available because of that conference, and we really wanted to reinvest that in Canada and make sure that we could support additional work that is really focused on what's specific to the Canadian experience in shared space and in social purpose real estate, and really advance the knowledge and the opportunity to kind of work together and create more infrastructure for yourselves. So we were really excited. We put out an RFP, we got great responses and selected KRD Consulting. We've invested our funds in the first year of NCN Canada and a little bit for the second year, hopefully. But we're hoping this is a springboard to a lot of other great work. I know a lot of you were involved in all the phone calls and the meetings at the conference and then after the conference to help us craft what this effort was going to look like. And so we're just super excited. We're excited to be working with Tides Canada. The NCN Canada is a project of Tides Canada. And so we've just been thrilled to have so many great partners, and the work that Erin and Roman are doing I think will be really beneficial to you all. So hopefully that covers it. Erin, if I missed anything, just let me know, but super excited to see so many folks on this call.
All right, sorry, I had muted myself and then forgot. So thank you very much, Laura, for that context. It's kind of a good segue because we're going to now move into from that historical context to sort of where we're at now and what we're working on in this first year pilot. So in terms of the larger project vision that we're situating our work within, it really comes down to 3 key areas in terms of how we're conceptualizing it. So one of those is clarifying the Canadian context for this work. There's a lot of overlap in the resources and tools and wisdom and knowledge across North America. There's a lot of shared stuff between the US and Canada, but there's still a particular need for some Canadian-specific resources and conversations and tools around things like policy areas, CRA law, that sort of thing. And it's really trying to get clear on what really are the specific needs, or maybe some of the gaps that aren't being filled currently by NCN's work, and how can we work towards filling some of those gaps. It's about integrating new and existing resources, so we completely recognize that NCN is an existing wealth of resources. There's so much there to build from. This certainly isn't a replacement of any of that work. It's really adding to it. And it's creating a foundation for NCN Canada. So this is, again, a pilot year. We're currently a program of Tides Canada, and it's really setting the groundwork for and try to figure out, what's going to happen next, but it's setting the groundwork for future work through NCN Canada. So that's kind of the broader vision. In terms of our project plan, it also breaks down into 3 key areas, and I'm going to turn it over to Roman to talk about the first 2. So that's a sustainability strategy, and then also this knowledge building piece. And then I'll talk after him about the community building side of things.
Yeah, so we do tend, I think, to really like 3s, and so there's going to be a bunch grouped in 3s. So 3 kind of key areas of work, as Erin just alluded to, for this first year are kind of developing and helping to begin to implement a sustainability strategy, doing some work around a knowledge building and a knowledge platform building process, and a community building piece as well. So on the sustainability strategy, the idea is knowing kind of the breadth of contexts that are represented in all of you, and then certainly all of the other folks that aren't on the call today, but that for whom this is relevant as well. Knowing that in a 1-year project, we're not going to be able to meet all of the different needs and support all of the different pieces that need to get built, starting to think about how to move forward past year 1. And so in that stream, we've really been working on 2 pieces. One is kind of supporting the steering committee making a strategic decision about the form that NCN Canada is going to take for the coming future, and then beginning to build some of the resources to be able to support the work past April 2017. So currently, just as a kind of by the way, this first year, we're about between 1/3 and halfway through that. We started our work in late April of this year, and we're going through April 2017, so that'll be year 1. So on the sustainability side, we've gotten to a point where there is a decision about how to structure the work going forward. We're going to do our best to remain a program at Tides Canada and continue that partnership into year 2. And then so now our task is to begin on the fundraising strategy and resourcing side to be able to make that happen. So that work is kind of happening in parallel. In the meantime, one of the more kind of directly deliverable streams of work is a knowledge building stream. And so as a part of that process, we're beginning a learning series, a series of publications. So we'll have 3 because we love 3s in this year. And so the first, and these are really, they're kind of like white papers. They're short research documents, research briefs about things that are specific to the Canadian context along these 3 areas. And so the first is the legal and regulatory context. And that work is actually done, and we're just working with a graphic kind of layout designer to make that publicly available pretty shortly, so you should all see that coming up. We've started the research component process for the second one, which is the different business models, the different types of ways that the business of nonprofit centers is organized in Canada. So that process is going now, and so if any of you who are on the call today are interested maybe in sharing your experience or some of your questions to help to guide our information gathering, then please get in touch with me. My email should be there under my face somewhere if you hover over the screen. And yeah, so please feel free to be in touch directly, and then we'll talk about that. And the third one that that we're working on putting out afterwards, sometime in early 2017, is going to be around measuring impact. And so again, thinking about all the different kinds of activities that may take place in the different strategies that are carried out at nonprofit centers. What are the kind of particular movements in Canada around measuring and sharing and communicating that impact? So those are the three that we'll put out this year. And the sort of, we're beginning to think about what might be relevant for next year, but that's also a question that we'll come to you with later on in this talk and later on throughout the year as well. So Erin, I'll give it to you for the third stream.
Okay. Thanks, Roman. The third stream is really this community building piece. And so one aspect of that is community of practice, building community of practice over the next little while. How we're thinking of that is it'll involve 5 or 6 meetings of a pan-Canadian group, and that will be virtual meetings using this Zoom technology. So this is another reason to be testing this out today. And it's drawing on curriculum that has been developed by NCN, primarily around management, the management of shared spaces, topics such as managing tenant and partner expectations, developing center manuals, developing policies, creating, kind of doing the culture piece, culture development and collaboration. And so that's sort of one piece, and I'll talk a bit more about the communities of practice after. But community building also includes a chunk of work that will involve visiting Ontario for the Ontario Nonprofit Centers Network conference next month. So hoping to connect with some folks in Toronto at the same time as that. Also looking to visit a location out east in the Maritimes, possibly Halifax, just to pull together some in-person connections there, and to really kind of reach out to that part of the country with this work. It's been a part of the country that hasn't, yet been as engaged in the Nonprofit Centers Network, so trying to do some in-person connecting, and then also developing sort of some emerging or promising practices from what's going on in Ontario, what's going on out in the Maritimes, what's going on in Calgary, because we're more familiar, Roman and I, with our particular context here, and just kind of trying to thread together some themes that we're seeing across Canada as well to contribute to this network and community building piece. So that's kind of in a nutshell the community building side of things. In terms of the community of practice, I'll talk a bit more about that. Some of you have already been part of these conversations. So this builds on previous discussions taking place through NCN. There was a survey that was conducted. There was a web call that took place, all trying to figure out sort of what the focus area would be. And all respondents that were part of those input pieces showed interest in the idea of a virtual community of practice. So that's one of the reasons that we're taking that approach. Also hearing from Laura and Katie a lot through all their hands-on experience that there's a lot of interest around people wanting to access resources from their peers. And so connecting kind of on a peer-to-peer level with resources that they kind of already have access to or experiences that they're having that they can share with each other. there's really sort of the capacity building piece, and then there's like the network building piece, and we're trying to kind of hit on both of those with the communities of practice. And so we took all of this into account, and the original idea was to begin the communities of practice in September, and again was in contact with some of you about that. But then upon further conversation and input and just thinking about it, we decided to take a bit of a step back and prioritized first connecting more with folks, such as you, about NCN Canada more generally, what are the expectations for this pilot year, and then situating the communities of practice more broadly. In that, also wanted to take a bit more time to connect with more people and do some more outreach. There's a lot of people we're coming across that maybe aren't currently NCN members, but are working in shared spaces that are interested in being connected. Like there's just a lot that we want to be trying to pull together and wanting a bit more time to connect with people. So the new plan is to start up communities of practice so next month, so mid-October. Still looking at 5 or 6 sessions, 90 minutes in length using Zoom, the potential of some small exercises or activities between meetings. Again, the topic's really aligning with that management stream piece that NCN has put together. We'd be looking at $150 to participate, and a maximum of 24 for people who can be accommodated in that group. So I think what we'll end up doing is, if you're interested, so we already have the people that have expressed interest through the web form, through different conversations. If you're new to even hearing about the communities of practice and you want to talk in a bit more detail, certainly contact me. My email is also it should be below my floating head, or you would have my email through the previous emails anyway, and we could talk a bit more. But I think we'll try doing like a doodle poll for the second week of October, just trying to figure out which day to start with and go from there. The payment will actually be coming in through Tides Canada, so we'll be setting up a different payment form just for that piece of work. We can send more details about that as well. So yeah, really excited to start the communities around just that capacity building, sharing piece, but then also to further deepen this network that's already kind of existing in Canada. So yeah, so that's that in a nutshell. And just checking the plan here. So I mean, we're ahead of schedule, but I think we really wanted to be able to leave some room for some sharing from you. And so Roman has some questions that he's going to be posing, and we'll try our best to make this work via Zoom and see how we can open up the participation a little bit. So I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you. So sort of with that bit of a brief introduction, we're hoping to get a sense from you folks about kind of how that landed and where it sits. And after hearing that, what stands out for you and what's really alive for you as something that we can build on for, again, as we're thinking about year 2 potentially. What are some of the things that you might find really particularly useful, and what are you most likely to participate in? Might be a question that I set for you first. So I'm going to unmute everyone, and then just let you kind of pop up as you feel like you might want to participate and say something.
So this is Debbie in Edmonton. Can people hear me? Okay, so the things that interest me, because we're kind of just opening, is developing policy and process and operating a center, but also in measuring our impact. So we're at a real key point where we're actually developing an app to collect baseline metrics and measure our impact, report to our funders and our community.
Maybe I might chat about that in the coming weeks to ask you more directly about that process. That sounds really fascinating. You know what? We're getting a lot of, okay. I've muted everybody back again because we're getting a lot of feedback. So maybe I'll just ask you, you can unmute yourself down at the bottom of the Zoom screen there. So if anybody else would like to maybe jump in, then I'll ask you to unmute, introduce yourself, maybe give us some feedback or respond to someone you already heard. And then when you're finished, mute yourself again. So that was quite a bit of feedback there. So anyone else, what stands out? What's interesting?
It's Linda Hoffman from Edmonton. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Linda.
Hi. I'm really quite excited by what you've proposed for your first year. I really like the idea of these research documents that you're preparing, and I think generally the plan that you've got is, well, I think it's exciting, but it's also doable. I appreciate that, and yeah, I can't think of anything else at this point for the coming year. I think you know, as I say, I'm particularly interested in the research documents you described. I think that they sound very useful, and I like the idea of trying to identify the Canadian points that we can expand on through NCN. So I think it's all very positive. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Linda. How about in thinking about the communities of practice, maybe, and just the community building component more specifically, what might be some ways in which we can really be of support to folks in continuing to participate in the broader NCN community, the global NCN community, but also to begin to build out a bit of a Canadian community of our own? What might be interesting for you to participate in from that perspective?
Hi there, it's James from New Path up in Barrie, and I think from our perspective, one of the things that really interests us about being a part of a community of practice is obviously the chance to get together and to talk about things that are affecting all the shared spaces and the multi-service centers. But from a province-by-province perspective, it's identifying what are the pressures within each of the provincial areas of interest. For instance, in Ontario, there's a lot of talk about community hubs and community hub development, and there is a real role for us to be an advocate for shared space and for NCN Canada in that mix. So it'll be interesting to see, as part of the discussions at the community of practice, to have that province by province perspective, and then almost to identify pressure points or areas of interest that the group as a whole wants to target and work on over the course of a 6-month or a 12-month period. So that's really just off the top of my head.
That's great. Yeah, that's great, James. Thank you. And already we've seen for sure from both the kind of real-time perspective with the energy and the work that's happening in Ontario around the Community Hubs Initiative. I think we've got Brendan from the Secretariat on the call today. And for sure, there's a lot of opportunity to align the work of NCN and NCN Canada and that initiative. And we're starting to hear from the kind of particular contexts in other provinces as well, and certainly the work in Vancouver that's happening around spree and social purpose real estate is, again, so relevant and so related, but quite distinct, right? And so being able to kind of figure out what are the common threads and what are the distinct pieces that we can all use to kind of leverage together and learn from each other is going to be the kind of work that we can only do in the context of a community. So I think that's a really exciting possibility coming up. Yeah. Anybody else?
I already spoke, so if somebody else has something, I have something very specific that I wanted to mention. We're at the very beginning of a developing center and we're moving to Microsoft Dynamics CRM. Our biggest pain point is to create an integrated communications and technology backbone for our center, and therefore to create not just a physical space of Jerry Forbes Center, but also the virtual world. So we're looking at the very core, what we're calling core business solutions.
Mm-hmm.
So I would be interested in that community of practice in, you know, setting up the core infrastructure for back office.
Great. Erin, is that something that we touch on in the curriculum for this first year, or is that going to be something that maybe we can look to build on for going forward?
I think it might be maybe too specific for the first year, but I think it's certainly something that we would be keeping in mind and continuing to add to the ideas as the community of practice goes forward. So,
yeah.
But you never know.
Great, thank you. And if it doesn't come out through that channel, then certainly it's a conversation that I know will be alive for others as well as yourself. And so, yeah, I think it'll be a helpful conversation.
Hi, it's Bill Davidson. I'm calling from the Langs Hub in Cambridge, Ontario.
Hey, Bill.
So, hi, I have a little bit of feedback and a few questions. So, and I've been to some of the NCN activities, the conference, and a few workshops over the years, and think it's great that you're looking at expanding into Canada. Really like the idea of having community of practice and having 3 white or position papers specific to the Canadian context. I think that's a great way to start. So I do have a few kind of broader questions though, and certainly want to encourage some ongoing connection to our hub secretariat at the province at Queen's Park in Ontario, because you know, I don't know if something different will emerge in Ontario, like a community of practice or a reference group. So, and I also think we have to be mindful of our time, as can we manage both a provincial link, Canadian link, and then a North America link, right? So, and I think that's doable, but we probably have to be mindful of timing of all of that, as community hubs or not-for-profit centers, so we don't get overwhelmed. Some technical questions I have, Roman. You referenced, you know, the idea of fundraising and strategic planning, and so I guess, and I'm sorry if I missed this, you know, is the vision to have a Canadian association separate from NCN, and eventually will we be paying membership fees to a Canadian association? Is that the vision?
Maybe I'll start, and then Laura, I'll let you kind of jump in if I miss anything. My understanding is that is not the vision, and we're not growing a replacement or a competition to NCN, and certainly all of the decisions that we've been faced with so far in the first kind of half of the year, whether at the strategic level or even at the implementation level, what we're trying really hard to be mindful of, and can certainly use all of your help with, is not doing the kind of work that accidentally sunders the community into two. We don't want to break the existing community in half. We don't want to be building a separation. What we want to be doing is kind of building on the resources and the work and the connections that already exist, the capacity, the collective capacity that already exists, and just adding to that from a bit more of a specific lens, that being the kind of Canadian perspective. And I think this strategic decision that's already been taken by the NCN Canada advisory group reflects that, right? And the notion that for the next, at least for the next year, but certainly even going forward, we'll look for the kinds of structures that support that. And so the structure for the next year will remain the same as it is for this year, which is that will be a program of Tides Canada, so that all of the kind of more macro and global and not Canada-specific conversations will continue to funnel through NCN as well. Laura, is there anything else that you can add to this?
Yeah, I mean, I think Roman spoke very eloquently on that. I mean, I think we always sort of follow the mantra of form following function, and you know, we knew that there was work to be done in Canada that that we needed assistance with, and that we needed folks on the ground in Canada to help us advance. And so I think that's, you know, really where we're at in terms of this. I think you know, we wanted to sort of meet your needs and yet still not duplicate effort. So I think this is an ongoing conversation, and our vision is not to was not, when we created this, to create a separate entity that would duplicate effort, but to certainly meet your needs better in terms of developing content that is more specific to your work, and to help you share with each other some of your best practices that are Canada specific. You know, Jody was just asking about you know, compensation policies and pay grids for community animators, and we just put out a publication that collected data from both USA and Canadians on salary information, and I think that's very helpful. Obviously, it's not as specific as just being among the Canadian market, but I think it's a good example of, you know, a lot of information is applicable across the borders, but we still want to be able to meet your needs for things that are specific to your situation. So hope that helps.
Yes, that's helpful. I was just trying to get the context, Roman, when you reference fundraising. So, and I anticipate that that's fundraising in the context of the support that you have from Tides Canada.
Correct.
Okay. And then I just have one other kind of technical question, and I'm sorry, it's just, you know, we're all in not-for-profit organizations, and the budget is pretty tight, and you know, we're already paying a membership fee to NCN, so I'm wondering why there's an additional fee to be part of a community of practice when we're giving our time and expertise to support each other. Can you help me understand that?
Can I do that, Roman?
Sure.
It's one of those things. It's a member benefit in the sense that, you know, we're providing the backbone to do the community of practice. We have found that you certainly we end up, especially if you're a part of the collaboration project, you know, the folks who participate in that, I think having some skin in the game in terms of paying some fee is very helpful for folks. And in addition, it's a lot of work on the other end. So, you know, we need to make sure that all of this stuff is financially self-sufficient. You know, we did go back and forth about how to price these things, and we're kind of working on that in the pilot year to figure that out. But I think what we wanted to do here is, you know, make sure that we are, you know, covering costs as well as, you know, meeting folks' needs. And that's the exact same format that we're using. You know, we have a simultaneous community of practice going on in the US, and we're trying to put together an evaluation group that will build on the work of the collaboration project, and those would also be fee-based, just because of the costs that are involved in the staff time. So.
Okay, Laura, that's helpful clarification. We're just part of 2 or 3 different types of communities of practice, and we've never been charged a fee for it. So, and I guess I'm trying to understand, you know, if there's going to be ongoing supplementary fees to the work that we're doing in Canada, I want to be really honest and say that's not sustainable in addition to our NCN fee. You know, we're giving an in-kind contribution of our time and expertise as well. So I just think it's important to put that on the table, because I want to support your efforts, but if it becomes cost prohibitive, it will be difficult.
No, it's a fair point. And I just want to say, I mean, at least the way we look at community practice is it's not, you know, you're getting out of it as much as you're putting into it. I think that the folks who were on the collaboration project call would say that, or were part of that process, would say that, you know, they learned as much, if not more, from their peers. So it's a facilitation of that work. But I think it's a very good point, and it'll be part, I mean, that's part of what we're experimenting with in this whole pilot year, is figuring out, A, what people are interested in, you know, B, what price points there are. I mean, it informs the fundraising strategy. I mean, it's just very helpful. And I hope you'll continue to kind of give feedback, because you know, that's the only way we can kind of figure out how to move this forward. So, I mean, from my perspective, we're taking a bit of a risk on this NCN Canada effort, and but I trust that with all of you kind of being active participants in it, we can kind of make, you know, set it up for a good foundation for moving forward. So I really appreciate the feedback, and keep it coming.
Yeah, and if I can just, another piece to that, I think for, and I don't know if this will be directly relevant